world for everybody. Everybody is valuable. You got to do the work and you got to develop your craft and get good. But I just had a really interesting day where a lot of different things kind of hit me all at once and I kind of connect the dots. I'm about to take a little 15-minute nap here. And so here's the deal. I think many of us go through periods in our lives, and many of us who are artists, and oh, I'm glad you're joining me, Roberto. We compare ourselves to others, and we compare ourselves to our heroes, and sometimes we can't imagine being as skilled or as great an artist as the ones that we emulate and that we love so much. But so today I ran across this is a great thing about the internet, right? I mean, there's bad things about it, but I saw one of the master classes that was being advertised. You know, the masterclass.com. They have people like Itzhak Perlman and filmmakers. And so on that was a Steve Martin masterclass. And he said that he, in the beginning, didn't think he was good, didn't think he had any talent whatsoever. And he said people are always coming up to him asking him, how do I get an agent? How do I do this and that? And he said, the first thing you want to work on is being good. But beyond that, just being good, is that we all have our own unique way of looking at the world, and we have our own unique way of creating and expressing ourselves that is completely valuable. And I thought that was really striking, because I've always felt like that. To this day, I still have voices in my head that, man, why are you doing this? You're not really that talented. There's so many more talented people than you are. We have that critical inner voice that's always comparing to other musicians or other artists, and I have personally put off writing music for many, many years because I went through a period. I hope this is short, but I went through a period where I was comparing myself to vocalists. Vocal songwriters. I was jealous. I was always jealous how a songwriter can write a song and connect with an audience, and I always felt like that. Audiences generally connect better with songwriters and not instrumental musicians. I went through that kind of feeling sorry for myself period for almost a decade. Well, anyway, so I'm running across another video by Marissa Peer, who's a very famous therapist, and she had a video that said something like, people waste years of their lives thinking they're not enough. And I think it's a matter of just deciding that you are enough and just going for it and not succumbing to the dangers of the critical mind of comparing yourself to your heroes and your people that you feel are so much more talented than you are. And you really just have to make that step and believe in yourself and go for it. So I've been writing a lot of new music and just doing that and just saying, you know what, this is good. This is good. I'm excited about writing new music. I'm creating a songbook. Let's stick with it. It feels good. It's giving me that sort of momentum to continue on. And I'm revisiting my instrumental music and getting back in touch with that part of myself, which has been essentially dormant songwriters who I still love. But I'm coming out on the other side of it now. And there are so many different, I'd be curious for those of you who are watching what you've struggled with below. And there's so many ways, that traditional music education, classical music education, jazz education, that you can go so far with that. If you have teachers that push you really hard and you have great, standards and that you're trying to, follow, and you can kind of get lost in that and being good enough and comparing yourself to your greats, and then you lose the pleasure of why you've done this in the beginning. And I think I'm coming around at age 51 to the other side of this to say, hey, there's a healthy balance and a way to do this. There's a healthy way to push yourself. But if you're not going to be a Jean-Luc Ponty, you aren't Jean-Luc Ponty. I'm not Itzhak Perlman. I am Will Taylor. I have a unique voice, and it is good enough, and it is valuable to many people, and it doesn't matter if I ever become famous and blah, blah, blah. So what do you think of that? Let me know below. I'm going to go take a nap. And I just think it's interesting that that people, that sometimes all these thoughts just come together. So Marissa Peer, Steve Martin, go watch that Steve Martin thing. Steve Martin said, I never thought I was talented at all whatsoever. The great Steve Martin when he was young. And yet he has his own unique way of looking at the world in comedy and writing that is so him and so powerful. Steve Martin, right, Karen? And Marissa Peer is this other person I was watching. And you just have to believe in yourself and stop comparing. Start creating your own way of looking at the world and do that and focus on that. You know what? Life is short and that's a lot to focus on. So get to work. I want to hear your comments below, please. So, hey, I'm sitting here and this is part 2, an addendum to You're Good Enough. And I was just thinking about how common it is for even folks that I admire, that I consider to be great artists that have achieved so much. It's so common for many of these folks who have achieved so much to still have great insecurities about themselves, to have insecurities that they're enough. I'll give you an example that happened to me when I was 21 years old. I had gotten hired to fly to New York City. First, I flew to San Francisco to audition for the Turtle Island String Quartet, the only jazz string quartet ever, or actually the only jazz string quartet that I knew existed at that time in 1991. I flew out, and I got this is before internet times. I just wrote a letter to the quartet, and they invited me out after they heard me play some live jazz on my viola on KUT radio all the way back in 1991. So they invited me out, they flew me out to audition, and they ended up liking me so much that they invited me to play with them in New York City and Town Hall on National Public Radio. And we were also going to be interviewed for CBS Sunday Morning. So it was one of the biggest breaks of my career on viola. And so I ended up in New York City. I flew in a big Airbus from San Francisco to New York City. And it was one of the most amazing times of my life because I remember just exploring New York with Daryl Anger and them saying that I was going to be coming back to New York regularly and that I was going to be this voice as a jazz string player. Well, anyway, on the night of the performance at Town Hall, there were 3 acts on the bill, and the Turtle Island String Quartet, we were the not the opener, but the headliner. We were the headliners. So there was this horn group that was from Saturday Night Live, the horns from Saturday Night Live, and then there was Glenn Moore, a bass player with Oregon, who I adored, this bass player with the band Oregon. So here we had one of my heroes opening up for us, and here I was, this 23-year-old kid playing in Town Hall, New York City, getting to do my dream, being a jazz violist. And I'm sitting up in the balcony with the cellist of the Turtle Island String Quartet, Mark Summer, and we're watching the other acts sound check. And I'm just trying to keep it together, because I've never performed in front of an audience that size or with that much prestige on National Public Radio. Any case, I'm sitting next to the cellist, and he tells me, I gotta go backstage. I can't. When I'm watching another band set up, it just looks so difficult. I can't imagine myself doing that. Or I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he basically was like, he had to go in his zone to prepare and not watch others do it because it looks so difficult. And I feel like that so many times when I see other artists or other musicians. I think, like, there's no way I could do that. Stand on a stage in front of 1,000 people with a light on me and maintain my wits about myself. Well, so I mean, this is the very well-known jazz cellist. I hope he doesn't mind me outing him,